What happens when royalty forgets respect? In just 36 seconds, a prince goes from honored guest to escorted out. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now because we're pulling back the curtain on royalty's dark side, exposing entitled celebrities and their shocking behavior the cameras never showed you. We've got the raw footage they don't want you to see, and you won't want to miss a single reveal. Drop your thoughts in the comments about this outrageous behavior. Let's get into it. It started as what should have been a straightforward conversation. Tamron Hall, respected journalist and beloved talk show host, welcomed her guest onto the stage with the same warm professionalism she brings to every interview. The audience applauded. The lights were perfect. Everything seemed ready for another engaging segment. But from the moment the prince sat down, something felt off. There was a tension in his posture, a look in his eyes that suggested he didn't want to be there. Still, Tamron began with her signature grace, opening with a thoughtful question about his recent charitable work. The prince barely looked at her. He gave a dismissive wave of his hand and said, "Can we skip the boring stuff? I'm sure your viewers don't care about that." Tamron paused, her smile never wavering, though anyone watching closely could see the slight change in her expression. She maintained her composure beautifully. "Actually, our audience is very interested in the work you do. That's why you're here." The prince leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms like a petulant child. "Right. Well, I'd rather talk about things that actually matter, not whatever questions you prepared." The audience shifted uncomfortably. You could hear a few murmurs. This wasn't going the way anyone expected. Tamron, ever the professional, tried to redirect. She smiled and said, "Of course. What would you like to discuss?" But the prince didn't answer her question. Instead, he looked around the studio with obvious disdain. "Is this really the best studio you could get? I've been on much better shows than this." The air went cold. Crew members looked at each other. The audience gasped. Tamron's professionalism was being tested in real time, broadcast live to millions of viewers. She kept her voice steady, but you could hear the subtle edge underneath. This show has won multiple awards and has some of the most loyal viewers in daytime television. The prince waved his hand again, that same dismissive gesture. Sure, daytime television. Very impressive." His tone dripped with sarcasm. Tamron took a breath. She was really trying, to salvage this. "Let's talk about your upcoming projects. I understand you have several initiatives launching soon." The prince rolled his eyes. Actually rolled his eyes on live television. "Do you always ask such basic questions? I thought you were supposed to be good at this." That was the moment. When everyone watching knew this interview was spiraling. Tamron's jaw tightened just slightly, her hands folded carefully on her desk. When she spoke, her voice was calm but firm. "I prepare thoroughly for every guest. I ask questions that I believe will give our audience insight into who you are and what you care about. If you're not interested in having that conversation, perhaps we should reconsider this interview." The prince laughed. It wasn't a friendly laugh. It was mocking, sharp. "Reconsider? Do you know who I am? People don't reconsider interviews with me. I do you a favor by showing up." The studio went completely silent. Even the crew stopped moving. Tamron sat perfectly still for a moment, and when she spoke next, her voice was ice. "No one does me a favor by disrespecting me, my team, or this show. We invited you here because we thought you had something valuable to share. But respect goes both ways." The prince's face changed. He leaned forward, pointing a finger at Tamron. "Excuse me? You're going to lecture me about respect? Do you know what my family has done? The history we represent? You should be honored. I'm even sitting here." Tamron didn't flinch. "Your title doesn't give you permission to be rude. Your history doesn't excuse bad behavior. And right now, you're being incredibly disrespectful to everyone in this room." The prince stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. The sound echoed through the silent studio. "This is ridiculous. I don't have to sit here and be talked to like this by some daytime television host." Tamron stood as well, matching his energy but with complete control. "You're absolutely right. You don't have to sit here, and I don't have to continue this interview. We're done." The prince's eyes went wide. He clearly wasn't expecting her to end things. "You're ending this? You're ending my interview?" Tamron's response was perfect. Calm, measured, but absolutely final. "Yes, I am. This is my show. And I won't allow anyone, regardless of their title or status, to treat me or my team with disrespect. Security will show you out." The prince sputtered. Actually sputtered. You can't be serious. Do you know what kind of backlash this will cause? My people will destroy you. Tamron didn't move. She stood there, poised and powerful. I'm very serious. Security, please. 2 security guards appeared from the wings. The prince looked around wildly, as if expecting someone to come to his defense, but the crew stayed silent. The audience stayed silent. Everyone watched as this royal guest, this person who thought his title made him untouchable, realized he'd pushed too far. The prince jabbed his finger toward Tamron one more time. This is outrageous. You'll regret this. I've been treated poorly by hosts before, but never like this. You're making a huge mistake. Tamron's voice remained steady. The only mistake was thinking you could come onto my show and behave this way. Please leave. The security guards stepped closer. The prince looked at them, then back at Tamron, then at the audience. He seemed to be waiting for someone to stop this, to tell him this was all a misunderstanding, but no one did. Fine, he snapped, his face red now. I don't need this. I have better things to do anyway. He yanked off his microphone, not even bothering to hand it to anyone, just letting it clatter onto the chair. You just destroyed your own career. Tamron didn't respond to that. She simply nodded to security, and they began to escort him toward the exit. The prince walked stiffly, his shoulders tight, trying to maintain some shred of dignity, but everyone could see it. Everyone could see what had just happened. A prince, used to people bowing and scraping, had just been kicked off a talk show for his behavior. As he reached the edge of the stage, he turned back one last time. You know what? You're not even worth my time. This whole show is beneath me. I should never have agreed to come here in the first place. Tamron met his eyes directly. Then, we're in agreement. Goodbye. The security guards firmly guided him the rest of the way off the stage and through the exit. The door closed behind him with a heavy click that seemed to echo through the entire studio. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The camera stayed on Tamron, standing alone on her stage. She took a slow breath, smoothed down her jacket, and turned to face the camera directly. Well, she said, and there was something in her voice. Not anger, not smugness, just quiet strength. That was unexpected. The audience erupted. They started clapping, then cheering, then standing. The entire studio rose to their feet in support of their host. Tamron smiled, a real smile this time, and nodded her appreciation. Thank you. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have an amazing guest who actually wants to be here. But before they cut to commercial, she added one more thing. Let me be clear about something. This show has always been about respect. Respect for our guests, respect for our audience, and respect for ourselves. Nobody, and I mean nobody, gets to come into this space and treat people badly. I don't care what your title is, where you come from, or what your last name might be. Respect isn't optional. It's required. The audience cheered even louder. Crew members clapped from behind their cameras. Even the production staff in the control room could be heard whooping through the speakers. Tamron had drawn a line, and everyone in that building knew they just witnessed something powerful. What makes this moment so important isn't just that a guest was kicked off a show. That's happened before on various programs. What makes this different is how it happened. Tamron never raised her voice. She never lost her composure. She didn't resort to insults or theatrics. She simply stood her ground with quiet, unwavering dignity. Meanwhile, the prince had shown exactly the kind of entitled behavior that makes people distrust celebrities and royalty. He walked onto that stage expecting everyone to cater to him. He thought his title was a shield that would protect him from consequences. He believed that being born into privilege meant he could treat working professionals with contempt. He was wrong. Think about what he said. He insulted the studio. He mocked Tamron's questions. He dismissed her professionalism. He bragged about being on better shows. He claimed she should feel honored by his presence. And when she pushed back, he threatened her career. Every single one of those behaviors shows someone who believes rules don't apply to them. Someone who thinks respect only flows one direction, upward toward their status. Someone who has never been held accountable for treating others poorly. And Tamron said no. Just no. Simple as that. She didn't give him multiple chances to redeem himself. She didn't make excuses for his behavior. She didn't let his title intimidate her into accepting disrespect. When he crossed the line, she ended it, immediately, firmly, without apology. The contrast between them couldn't have been sharper. On one side, a professional woman who has worked incredibly hard to build her career. who treats every guest with dignity regardless of their status, who maintains standards for her show and everyone on it. On the other side, a privileged man who thought his birth gave him the right to look down on others, who couldn't handle being treated as an equal instead of a superior. What the prince didn't understand is that Tamron's show isn't some small operation that needs famous guests to survive. She's built a loyal audience specifically because she handles interviews with intelligence and respect. Her viewers tune in because they trust her. They know she's going to ask real questions and have genuine conversations. So when this prince showed up acting like he was doing her a favor, like she should be grateful for his presence, he fundamentally misread the situation. He thought he had the power. He was wrong. She had the power because it was her show, her platform, her rules. The way he reacted when she kicked him out tells you everything you need to know. He was shocked, genuinely shocked. You could see it on his face. It had probably never occurred to him that someone might actually follow through on ending the interview. He'd likely gotten away with similar behavior countless times before, with people too intimidated by his status to push back. Not this time. And his threats as he left, "You'll regret this. My people will destroy you. You just destroyed your own career." Those aren't the words of someone concerned about mutual respect or genuine conversation. Those are the words of someone who only understands power and intimidation. Someone who thinks consequences are things that happen to other people, not to him. But here's what makes Tamron's response so perfect. She didn't argue with his threats. She didn't defend herself. She didn't explain why he was wrong. She just said goodbye. Because she didn't need to justify her decision to someone who refused to understand basic human decency. The audience understood. They gave her a standing ovation, not just because they enjoyed the drama, though that was certainly part of it. They stood and cheered because she represented something important. She stood up for herself and her team in a way that so many people wish they could in their own lives. How many times have you been in a situation where someone with more power or status treated you disrespectfully? How many times did you bite your tongue because you couldn't afford to push back? How many times did you wish someone would stand up to that person and tell them their behavior was unacceptable? That's what Tamron did. She stood up, and people responded because they recognized that moment. They'd lived that moment. They'd wanted to be able to do what she did. Think about the prince's comment about being treated poorly by hosts before. That's telling, isn't it? It suggests this isn't the first time he's had conflicts during interviews. But instead of recognizing that maybe, just maybe, he might be part of the problem, he frames himself as the victim. Other hosts have treated him poorly, in his mind. Not that he's behaved poorly toward other hosts, that's classic entitled behavior. The inability to see your own role in negative interactions. The assumption that if something goes wrong, it must be someone else's fault. The complete lack of self-reflection or accountability. And when Tamron called him on it, when she made it clear that his behavior was the problem, he couldn't handle it. He lashed out. He made threats. He tried to assert dominance through his title and connections. Because that's all he had. He couldn't argue that he'd been respectful because he hadn't been. He couldn't claim he'd treated her professionally because he hadn't. All he had was his status, and he wielded it like a weapon. But Tamron had something stronger. She had integrity. She had standards. She had the respect of her audience and her team. And she had the courage to enforce her boundaries, even when facing someone who expected those boundaries not to apply to him. The moment when he said the show was beneath him, that he never should have agreed to come, that's the moment that really captures who he is. Because if he truly believed that, why did he agree to the interview in the first place? Was it just to promote something? Was it because his handlers thought it would be good publicity? Either way, the disrespect was breathtaking. Imagine inviting someone to your home and they spend the entire visit insulting your furniture, your cooking, your choice of decoration. And then, as you finally ask them to leave, they tell you your home was beneath them anyway and they never should have come. That's essentially what happened here. The prince agreed to be a guest on Tamron's show and then treated the entire experience with contempt. Tamron's final statement before the commercial break was important too. She made it clear this wasn't about one difficult guest or one bad interview. This was about the fundamental principles her show operates under. Respect isn't negotiable. It's not something she'll compromise on for ratings or celebrity guests or royal titles. That takes courage. It would have been easier to let things slide, to make excuses, to finish the interview despite the disrespect. Many hosts would have done exactly that, prioritizing the appearance of professionalism over actually demanding professional behavior from their guests. But Tamron drew a line. And by drawing that line publicly, on camera, in front of her audience, she sent a message, not just to this one entitled prince, but to every future guest. This is how we do things here. This is what we expect. This is what we require. The prince thought he was the prize. He thought his presence was the thing that mattered. He genuinely seemed to believe that the show needed him more than he needed the show. And maybe, in some contexts, that would be true. Maybe there are platforms desperate enough for celebrity guests that they'd tolerate any behavior. But not this one. Not Tamron's show. She'd rather have an empty chair than a disrespectful guest. She'd rather end an interview than compromise her standards, and her audience loved her for it. Because here's the thing about entitled behavior. It relies on other people accepting it. It requires witnesses to look the other way, victims to stay silent, systems to avoid accountability. Entitled people keep behaving that way because it works for them, because people let it work, until someone doesn't. Until someone like Tamron says, actually no, this stops here, this stops now. You don't get to treat people this way, and I'm not going to facilitate it by allowing this interview to continue. The prince left that studio having learned a lesson, whether he knows it or not. His title doesn't protect him from consequences. His status doesn't excuse poor behavior. And there are people, professionals like Tamron Hall, who won't be intimidated into accepting disrespect. That's why this moment matters. That's why people are talking about it. Not because a celebrity got kicked off a show, we've seen that before, but because of how it happened. The grace under pressure, the firm boundaries, the refusal to compromise standards for status. Tamron Hall showed everyone watching what it looks like to stand up for yourself professionally, to demand respect without being disrespectful yourself, to enforce boundaries without losing your composure, to hold powerful people accountable without apology or hesitation. And the prince? He showed everyone watching what entitled behavior looks like when it finally meets consequences. The shock, the anger, the threats, the inability to accept responsibility, the attempt to paint himself as the victim when he was clearly in the wrong. These are the moments that reveal character, not the carefully managed public appearances or the scripted interviews that go smoothly, but the unexpected conflicts, the tense exchanges, the times when someone can't hide behind their usual masks. The prince came onto that stage expecting one kind of experience. He expected deference. He expected softball questions. He expected to be treated as special because of his title. And when he didn't get that, when he was instead treated as an equal who needed to show basic respect, he couldn't handle it. Tamron came onto that stage, as she does every day, ready to conduct a professional interview. She prepared thoughtful questions. She welcomed her guest warmly. She tried multiple times to redirect when things got difficult. And when those efforts failed, when it became clear that respect wasn't going to happen, she made a decision. She chose dignity over drama. She chose standards over celebrity. She chose respect over ratings. And she did it with a calm certainty that made it clear this wasn't a difficult decision for her. It was obvious. It was necessary. It was right. That's leadership. That's what it looks like when someone truly values the principles they claim to stand for. Not just when it's easy or convenient, but when it costs something, when there might be backlash, when powerful people make threats. The standing ovation at the end wasn't just applause. It was recognition. It was validation. It was the audience saying, "We see what you did there, and we support it completely. We're with you. You did the right thing." And they were right. She did do the right thing, because allowing that behavior to continue, finishing that interview despite the disrespect, would have sent a different message entirely. It would have said that status matters more than respect, that titles excuse bad behavior, that professional standards are flexible when dealing with important people. Tamron refused to send that message, and in refusing, she sent a much better one. She reminded everyone watching that respect is universal, that professional standards apply to everyone, that no amount of privilege or status gives you the right to treat others poorly. So let that be the lesson from this moment. When someone shows you who they are through their behavior, believe them. When someone demands respect but refuses to give it, set boundaries. When someone uses their status to intimidate or demean, don't be intimidated. Stand firm, stand tall, stand up, just like Tamron Hall did.